Let's talk about the Chicago White Sox. I would say that this was a very disappointing squad. I almost called them the most disappointing squad in baseball this year, but I'll leave that for the next team we're going to talk about. This team fell hard, though. They fell really hard this season, or last season, I should say. They lost their manager. I think that actually might be a good thing moving forward. Lucas Giolito comes in, and obviously he had some rough goes. That rotation wasn't great. Mike Clevenger joins the rotation in the offseason. They also add Andrew Benintendi. They lose Jose Abreu. There's a lot to talk about with this team in this offseason. It's very important. The offense production was just dreadful last year. This is a team that we thought was going to run away with the American League Central. I think when you saw projections across the board, with the exception of maybe some Cleveland and Minnesota local news stations, you saw Chicago White Sox was going to win this division, and they didn't even see it was close. I saw some people having Chicago as their World Series pick. However, they finished 581 and 81. It was a very disappointing year. My question is, did they get any better? And can they rebound this season? Is this a team that's better than 81 wins? Don't answer that question. I want your over-under later. But with a new manager, new White Sox team, what's your thoughts? Can they rebound this season moving forward?
It's possible. There's still lots of time in the offseason, but I want to start by talking about Liam Hendriks, former Blue Jays reliever who recently just was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Won't have any kind of word as far as when he'll be back. I think I read today that they're not even going to even take a guess until at least opening day. So he'll be out for a very long time, and all putting baseball aside right now, nothing but well wishes for Liam and his family. I fell in love with him, the Aussie. Just a character and a really genuinely good person as well. But I fell in love with him when he was in Toronto, and so I wish nothing but the best for him. Getting back to the team, this is a massive blow for them on a team that was kind of questionable to begin with. So when you lose your closer like that, like Liam Hendriks was the topic of trade talks a lot this winter, right? Like this is where the team was. Like, are they going to trade their closer? That's how bad the position is for this team. They were, it could go either way, right? So I think the rotation is good on paper. It absolutely is good on paper, but as we've seen, particularly with Clevenger dealing with injuries and Giolito as well being inconsistent, it's good on paper, but the proof will be in the pudding. And man, I just don't know how that's going to go because with Dylan Cease and Clevenger, and it looks like a good rotation, but I just don't know if it's going to hold up to the test of a full season.
You can't think that it could be any worse than it was last year, right? Because it seems like everything just didn't go their way. And I don't know how much you blame on the management, on the coaching staff. I don't know how much you put on that, but at the end of the day, the player is the one that played the game. And I think we heard that a lot in the press conferences, that people tried to point fingers everywhere. But at the end of the day, the White Sox were taking the field, and they just weren't winning the games. It just wasn't happening for this team. They were struggling pitching. They were struggling on the offensive production. Talking about losing offensive production, not only this season, in the offseason, they get the biggest blow in offensive production with the departure of Jose Abreu. We're talking about a former American League MVP now is at the Houston Astros. That's a huge impact to the team. Sean, what's your thoughts on this one, on Jose Abreu taking off? I mean, that's obviously got to hurt this squad. But this is a big, not only is this a huge hit, I think, for their offensive production, but this is a guy who became the next big thing after Frank Thomas, if you will. I mean, Jose Abreu was like the face of this franchise for a very long time. Now we're seeing him in navy and orange, no longer in with the White Sox.
Yeah. So if you're looking to flat out replace Jose Abreu, I don't think you're going to. It's just not possible. But that being said, as impossible as it is, they do have Andrew Vaughn.
They do.
At 24 years old, who looks to be their new first baseman, and that is a good place to start if you're trying to replace Jose Abreu. You know, when you're looking at Andrew Vaughn in 134 games, he put up 17 home runs, a weighted runs created plus of 113. Not bad, not bad at all. His defense was atrocious, but I think that was they had him in the outfield. So if you're looking ahead to next year, 23 home runs. We're looking at a weighted runs created plus of 122. 2 wins above replacement, all from his bat. It's not going to be from his glove. I think that's a good place to start if you're going to look to replace Jose Abreu. Not that there's any pressure, of course, because I think that while, I just don't know where this team is going. I think that's the reason why I say that. Filling Jose Abreu's shoes is going to be tough. There's going to be pressure there, but the context of the team, I just don't know if there's going to be that much pressure on him anyway, right? So, anyway, long story short, you're not going to replace Jose Abreu, but they've got a pretty good start in Andrew Vaughn.
I'm with you. I have a lot of questions about this team, and I don't think we're going to be able to answer them. In a very long time. I think we're going to have to wait until opening day, and we might have to even wait a few weeks and to see what kind of Chicago White Sox team we're getting. To me, I feel like this team can be an AL Central winner, or they can be an AL Central basement team. And I don't have an answer to which side it's going to happen. I have a prediction, but I don't have an answer to this one. I feel like I have a strong thought on all the other 4 teams, but this one. There's always one in these central divisions, and this year it's the Chicago White Sox. They did make a splash in the offseason. They didn't just lose. Obviously, they got Clevenger, but they bring Andrew Benintendi back to the AL Central. Obviously, he was traded to the Yankees from the Kansas City Royals at the deadline. He comes back into the AL Central, this time with the White Sox. I think a lot of people think this is a huge splash. I'm not sure what I think about this one. Benintendi was great with Kansas City. He was a great leadoff batter. I think you could make the argument that he's one of the better leadoff hitters in all of baseball when he was with Kansas City. But when you're talking about adding somebody to be, maybe the next face of your franchise, I know Tim Anderson's obviously doing that right now, but Yohan Moncada has got some say in that as well. But when you're talking about another guy to come in free agency, with free agency, you always want to improve your team. They say the only way to improve your team is free agency. Trades can't do that because you're trading value. You're not adding value. I think there's some value added, but I just don't know, again, if that's enough for this team to solidify themselves as a front runner in this division.
I'm not even sold on the value that everybody assumes Andrew Benintendi brings. So here's my take on Andrew Benintendi last year. He was a decent player having a great year on a bad team at a time when people needed that kind of player. So it was almost perfect timing for him. And, good for him that he was able to sort it out at the right time and turn it into a free agent contract and all that stuff. I just don't, for what he is, he's a good hitter, but I don't know that he's not going to save the White Sox. Like, that's really what it comes down to, right? So if fans are expecting that to be their big signing and that, it's going to put them over the top, they're in for another disappointing season. All of your hopes cannot be pinned on Andrew Benintendi.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you with that one as well. A lot of questions for the Chicago squad, and another question for you: 81-81 last season, over under at 500. Did they make over the threshold? Did they get over 81 wins this season?
With Liam Hendricks out and the rotation having really it doesn't have question marks in the traditional sense, but it does have question marks. I'm gonna say under, unless Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez can have monster years and the rotation cannot be a question mark. Maybe, but I just, as of right now, right here, right now, they're under.
Yep. Well, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, the Chicago White Sox have the opportunity to be the best team in the Central or the basement. With that being said, too many questions to be seen with that. I'm leaning more towards the basement, not all the way down, but towards the basement. I also say under for the Chicago White Sox.